Welcome to Coming Home. Survive and thrive in homeschooling. Today I am talking about how to include grandparents in your homeschooling lifestyle for the best outcome for everyone. Families being together is as old as time. It's probably since World War II that this has become the exception, sometimes as a result of migration or immigration where the extended family stayed behind. It's helpful to define the purpose of being together. Is it school time, a social visit, or child-minding? Much of what happens will depend on the arrangement and understanding of each party, parents, children, and grandparents. There are many benefits to purposefully including grandparents in homeschooling, as well as things to be aware of. So in no particular order, here is my list. Firstly, and most obviously, a close relationship between the generations can blossom. Our children enjoy this with my parents because we saw them often as a natural part of our homeschooling time. The fullest lives are those with all generations involved. Secondly, if they do not want to do formal teaching, find out what they would like to impart to their grandchildren. Teaching skills are all vital things to learn and may not have been taken seriously by the grandparents as something worthy of passing on. Granny and Pop know how to do stuff. The chances are pretty good they have skills learned from previous generations when you needed to know how to make or fix something, or you went without. It might be an everyday activity for Granny to bake a cake or knit, but if it's not common in your house, this is perfect for teaching the grandchild how to cook and make clothing. There's no need for them to get this done before the grandkids come. It can be the time spent with them, cooking, gardening, mending, and doing all the stuff. When appropriate, take each opportunity to involve your children in the household tasks of Granny and Pop. There's so much to learn. 3. They can tell about family history. Encourage your parents to tell your children about life when they were children. If they have stories about what their grandparents told them, that's a treasure chest. Have them start with, "When I was a little girl," and make it a regular part of visiting time. It only needs to be one example each time if the example turns into a conversation. For example, "When I was a little girl, the milkman brought our milk bottles to our letterbox each night. The empty and clean glass bottles were in a special crate on the ground, and there was a token for each bottle." For the modern family who buys milk from the supermarket, there are many new ideas here. Glass bottles. What a milk crate looked like and why was it used? What are milk tokens? And why don't we have milkmen anymore? If you have recollections of your own grandparents telling you about the milkman dishing out milk from a huge metal container, unpasteurized, and from a horse-drawn cart, tell them that too. It could be you have the old book, Angus, which includes the horse-drawn milk cart. It could be the children want to visit a farm or drive out to the country to see cows or draw or write about what they were told. It could form the seed of an idea to write a story like Angus, or it could end with a yawn and disinterest. It's a chance to take. The next little girl's story may capture their interest, and just like that, Your parents are teaching when they thought teaching was the formal bookwork they didn't want to do. Part of the agreement with your parents is the stories from their past are not a chance to moralize with the children. Their job is to tell the story well enough for the child to see the difference and ask questions from there. You may have to train your parents in the show, don't tell approach of your homeschool method. Fourthly, create homeschool projects for children to interview their grandparent and record it. There are questions available to research, but I'm sure you can come up with a few yourself. When she was 11 or 12, one of our daughters interviewed my mother-in-law with a set of selected questions we had found. One of the side effects was a recognizable closer bond between them. More than 30 years later, portions of the interview were played at my mother-in-law's funeral. It was a precious contribution to the family and friends gathered, and special to the daughter who had done this so many years ago. A couple of years ago, our other two daughters drove with me and my mum to visit her homes and old neighbourhoods. With Mum's knowledge, we recorded this too. So much easier than taking notes, and the girls could concentrate on what Nana was saying and looking at what she was showing them. For Mum, it was recalling her childhood, which was nothing special, but to my girls it was family history and a fresh awareness that their elderly Nana was once a young girl just like them. That's a good awareness for young ones to have. Youth is fleeting. Fifthly, language. If your parents speak the language of where they immigrated from or learned when they were young from parents or grandparents, include a discussion with your parents about when and how to speak. This is a wonderful opportunity to have your children learn language and heritage. You will need to have an understanding between you and your parents of what this looks like. Do you want immersion or occasional teaching of incidental things? Do your parents want to speak in their native tongue, and how much? Do they catch the vision of the importance of keeping their grandchildren's history alive? Number 6, sharing of the load. All through history, it's the extended family involved in the rearing of children. Many cultures are still familiar with this ancient way. There's definitely something to be said about the load which is shared. You're not long into parenthood before discovering tiredness you didn't know existed and the worry of basic parenting. A quick word to those of you listening who are grandparents. The wisdom of our elders is necessary and comforting. I do, however, believe the responsibility and executive decisions lie with the parents. It is the duty of the grandparent to support the parent in the way they are bringing up children, rather than tell them the error of their ways. Do not undermine the authority of the parent. If you need to query something, ask if you can speak about such and such. Do not ask in the heat of the moment, but when you've had a chance to think about what to say and emotion has settled. Do not interfere, but be ready to offer advice when asked, and that includes camouflaged advice too. You know what I mean. Number 7, house rules. However, the rules at Nana's house may be different to the rules at their house, and that is fine. It needs to be understood by children, parents, and grandparents what these are. The child may be allowed to jump on the sofa at home, but if Nana doesn't like it, then the child needs to know, preferably by the parent, but Nana should be able to say so too. Kids are smart and can adapt to behavioural standards pretty quickly. The children need to respect their grandparents' house and time. That's your job to impart. Children are naive about what is socially acceptable. Time out of your house and in others is a good teaching time for respect. But house rules are different to insisting on educating their way just because it's their house. I'll deal with this more very soon. 8. You and your children need to be aware that older folk tire easily. Exuberant children are wonderful, but exhausting. Take them home before it gets too much. I'm guessing that a couple of hours at a time is plenty. You want the grandparents to look forward to them coming, not with a sense of apprehension. If there are physical difficulties or illnesses, you'll need to be even more sensitive. A little and often may be better. Number 9, reading. This can be a time of snuggling up on the couch and reading aloud a book that Grandma enjoyed as a young girl. Millie, Molly, Mandy, or Pollyanna comes to mind. Be clear with your parents about the importance and adequacy of simply reading aloud. They do not have to stop and explain things unless the child asks. There is pleasure in reading and listening, and the purpose of the story itself is the capable teacher. And they most certainly don't have to test the child's reading ability. This type of reading is one-way traffic. Having the child read to them is different. You need to decide if this is what you want. If the child wants to read to Grandpa, that's different again. Make sure he knows it's not his role in this instance to correct your child. If the reading is for learning purposes, Grandpa will need to know how you're teaching. Phonics is probably how he learned, but possibly not if he was at primary school in the 60s, when the revolutionary, modern, and oh so disastrous look-see method was taking the teaching world by storm. Also, talk to him about pronunciation, expression, and intonation. These are important, but is your child ready for these challenges? If the child is older, it could be a good opportunity to practice appropriate interpretation of the drama and excitement of the text. The responsibility is yours to communicate how you want the reading opportunities to happen. Your parents have a lot of experience, which is precious and needed, but it is easy to discourage a young child too. Something to be aware of is this: what to do when Nana or Granddad tests your child. What's 6 times 7? This could be because he's not sure you're doing a good job of teaching and checking up, and even though it's justified as a joke, it's not. He is checking up on you and your child. If Nana was a school teacher, she may feel it's her right to overrule or check up on her grandchild. It's not. Since homeschooling is a contrarian lifestyle choice, it's common for your family and friends to be concerned and want to check if you're doing a good job and your kids aren't being damaged. Well, it may be a concern of theirs, but I draw the line firmly here. They may not test your children unless you've arranged for a quiz to check their 6 times tables. You may have to coach your children on what to say if Granddad does ask what 9 times 3 is, even though you've talked about this. Mum said I don't have to answer that. Maybe all it needs. Number 10. Explaining the difference between the 2 types of your and the 3 types of there, and there is important, but Talk about the how and when. The time and place are what you need to decide. There's a balance between allowing your parents to be free range and you being over-controlling. And only you and your parents can figure out a good balance. And you'll need to talk this through every so often. You want these times with Grandma and Papa to be happy and memorable, not a time of anxiety and stress for any generation. If you can't trust your parents to keep to your guidelines, then you're going to have to decide what to do from here. Time with them can still happen, but perhaps on a more social level than a deliberate teaching time. 11. If you find yourself too nervous to approach your parents about how they're behaving with your children, you need help. Since it's your children who are the most important group here, you're going to have to deal with your inability to confront them. I'm not talking about an argument or getting defensive. I am remembering St. Paul's wise advice to speak the truth in love. If you need guidance as to how to do this, you can speak to a pastor or a counselor, or maybe hire a homeschooling coach to help you through this time. There could be other issues that need to be faced and worked through. If you're too scared to say anything, it's pretty clear there is. 12. Living together. Whether you share a property or live close by, there are more benefits than disadvantages to having grandparents actively involved in your homeschooling lifestyle. Most designs of our modern homes are for the nuclear family. And if you're considering living closer to or with extended family, there are some things to carefully consider before you commit to changing the way you do things and making financial commitments. If you're serious about combining households, but a little unsure, it could be a good idea to trial this before agreeing to changes. Renting a property suitable for the extended family whilst renting out both homes, should you both own one, for an agreed trial period will clearly show you what the reality is rather than the theory only. You will learn about separate living spaces, privacy, the noise of children and pets, visitors, and rising and sleeping times. Perhaps you might decide a granny flat attachment is a better idea. If your situation is more because the grandparents are needing help, there is more to carefully discuss and plan. Combining property and sharing finances needs to be done with legal advice, especially if there are other family members. You don't want unnecessary surprises and family misunderstandings down the road. Don't think that because you're Christian, you don't need this advice. Our lawyer, who heads up a Christian law firm and thus mostly Christian clients, has seen a steady and reliable trend of angry and costly challenges in spite of personal faith. No doubt today's topic has given you a few things to mull over. Much of the above are things we had to work through and a few things we should have done. If I have forgotten something or you have comments, please weigh in, as I'm sure there is plenty of interest in this. Please like, share, subscribe, all those things we need to get this podcast coming to those who would appreciate it. And once again, I recommend my website for resources and for talking to me about whether homeschool coaching is right for you. cominghomeinfo.com. Have a wonderful week.